Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where you are in the world. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor to represent the Center for Research in Digital Education here at the British University in Dubai. Unfortunately, my colleague, Professor Christopher Hill, has a family emergency, so can't join us today, but hopefully I can share some of the points of discussion that we've been having throughout this year. So the topic of our presentation today is AI in academic research, enhancing efficiency while preserving integrity. Um, in the early 1960s, Professor Rogers proposed this diffusion of innovation theory, in which he suggested whenever there's a new theory or a new innovation, let's say technology, for example, you tend to have people fall into different categories in how they respond to that technology. If you think about the iPad, when Apple first released the iPad, there were some people who were innovative and adopted it very early. There were many people who were kind of confused whether this should be a laptop or a desktop PC, and so they weren't really convinced about it for a period of time. And then there are some people who may be forced to use it due to their institutions. I could say the same about smartwatches. So there are some people who jumped on smartwatches when they first released. Me myself, I'm still wearing a traditional old-fashioned watch, but people are trying to convince me, to persuade me to move into using smartwatches. So I may do in the new year. And then there's some people who will never use smartwatches unless they're forced to. And so that's really a similar situation we're seeing with this AI technology. In November 2022, when ChatGPT was first released, there were certain people who jumped on the technology straight away. And there were many people who weren't really convinced about it or not really sure how it could add value to their lives. And so they really ignored it for a while. And then now some people are being forced to use it by their institutions, or even if their jobs have been taken away. So interestingly, when we look at popular apps like Spotify, Spotify took around 5 or 6 months before it reached a million users. Instagram, on the other hand, took around 2.5 months. As for ChatGPT, in approximately 5 days, it reached a million users worldwide, which I think shows how significant it is as a new innovation and how people are taking it very seriously. And Professor Andrew Ng, who is a co-founder of Coursera, the online learning platform, I attended a presentation of his last year where he described AI as the new electricity. And essentially he was saying at one point in human history, electricity wasn't in all of our homes, but now it is. And he was saying that AI will be in everybody's homes, in everyone's hands, on all devices. And in the same way we find it strange when people don't have access to electricity, he was saying that we will find it strange when we see people not having access to AI in certain parts of the world. And so, yes, I think we can all agree that AI has made a significant impact worldwide in the past 2 years. Now, when we think about AI, often we speak about ChatGPT specifically. But when you look at the developments of AI technology last year in 2023, every month there were at least two new AI apps released, at least two, and in a range of different areas. So ChatGPT itself is a chatbot like Bard and Bing, but there are other apps for creating automated videos, for programming code, for content creation, for the creation of presentation slides, automating processes and design and so on. So AI can be used in a plethora of ways, and there are many apps out there constantly being developed. Even this year in 2024, we've seen further developments. So OpenAI, the company who created ChatGPT, they've now developed Sora. So in the same way, I can say to ChatGPT, create a lesson plan for me to teach thermodynamics to some high school students. I can say to Sora, create a video of a lady walking down the road at night wearing something trendy, and it can generate that for me. Likewise, Tesla, who are known for their cars, have been dabbling with robots for the last couple of years and have now integrated AI in some of their robotic technology. And so you can see this image on the screen here of a robot using its fingers to fold some clothing. Right, so I think it's folding a t-shirt probably better than I fold my own, my own clothes, actually. Right, so it's really fascinating to see how quickly the technology is developing. And actually, moving into 2025, we're going to see even more advancements. I'm based here in Dubai. We're seeing automation becoming more and more normalized, and robotics and AI. In the area I live, when I order food or Starbucks or whatever, it's actually delivered to me by a robot. Right, so I don't have a driver who delivers it to my doorstep. And when you go to some of the supermarkets, like Carrefour, you can see robots come and they do scans of the stock, and they check, what's available on the shelves, and they go back, and then a human will come out to replace the stock. Well, I'm sure that will change soon as well. And if you look at some, ports and factories around the world, many of them are using robotics and AI now. I've heard reports of companies like Microsoft who are considering to transition their call center staff to completely AI bots in the coming years. So I think just globally, in all aspects of life, we can see how significant this AI transition is, and how quickly and rapidly it's developing. Now, for those of us in the field of education, one thing we need to be aware of is the fact that students are way ahead of us. So when I first heard about ChatGPT, it was from my students. They were already using it. I think many of us worry that students are using ChatGPT for lots of their essays, but they've moved on to other apps. There are other AI apps now. Okay, so I came across this app being used by some students called Kipper. From my perspective, I would say this is quite predatory, because when you go to the website, it's advertised as a tool which is undetectable by teachers. Okay, so obviously these companies know that universities and schools, we are now using AI detection software to see if students are using AI in their work, and this company or this app is saying, look, we've coded our AI in a way where we can write the essay for you, and it won't be detected by your institutions. And then again, many of us older generation, I suppose, we're not really up to date with the social media platforms like Snapchat and TikTok and these things. The students all help each other and support each other with these tools. And so there's all these videos by students at Stanford and Harvard using this app and sharing that with other students around the world on TikTok, right? Which is, I would say, quite unethical, but that's what's happening. We need to be aware of it. And not only for essay writing, but even for exams. So there's this tool called Acify. Again, when you look at the marketing for this tool, it says unlock a stress-free school life, ace every assignment with ease. And how this tool works is it's integrated into a browser. So if your institution uses a lockdown browser to prevent students from having access to the internet during an online exam, well, this tool gets around that lockdown, and actually the students wouldn't even need to browse the web, because what they would do, they can highlight any question on the quiz. This works on all platforms: Blackboard, Moodle, Canvas, all the main learning management system platforms. They basically highlight the question and it presents them with the answer. So it could be a mathematical equation, it could be you've given them a map and they have to identify locations, it could be historical questions, whatever it is, it can answer the question instantly. So the students are way ahead of us in how AI could be used, and unfortunately, many of them using it for unethical reasons. Hence, last year, a number of academic researchers came together and proposed a competency framework for teachers, because they said, look, we need to know what the students know, but we should also be considering how we can use AI positively, as well as how it can be used unethically and negatively, because there are many positive usages for AI. I was recently shown the ChatGPT updates, which have voice features now. So you can speak to the app in different accents, and it can respond to your different accents as well. And so if you're learning a second language, and you wanted to listen to various accents of that language, ChatGPT can speak to you in those accents, which is quite interesting. Right? So it could be used in positive ways. Earlier this year, a number of researchers from UCL, University College in London, they collaborated with UNESCO to create a more detailed AI competency framework for teachers. Okay, so it's something that people are taking seriously. And actually, since then, there's been a few other competency frameworks developed as well. Because obviously, since it's new, no framework is perfect. Like, all of them can be enhanced and improved in different ways. But we can see more and more organizations and researchers around the world trying to figure out how we can make sure teachers are fully equipped to use AI effectively in the teaching and learning process and assessment process with their students. So what we've seen so far is AI is affecting all industries. AI has become more and more important in the education sector. And for those of us who are involved in academic research, I would like to pose the question, ethically speaking, is it acceptable for us to be using AI to conduct academic research? Now, I would imagine many people will say absolutely not. In fact, just yesterday, I had a conversation with a senior colleague who said that if we're using AI for research, what's the purpose of scholarship? Why do we need scholars, right? But interestingly, the Committee on Publication Ethics, a non-profit organization who were established in the 1990s, and they've been providing guidelines for ethical research practice for many years now, and lots of key organizations follow their guidelines. They produced a position statement last year, I believe it was in February 2023, where they've said, and I'll read what they've said specifically, authors who use AI tools in the writing of a manuscript, production of images or graphical elements of the paper, or in the collection and analysis of data must be transparent in disclosing in the materials and methods or similar section of the paper how the AI tool was used and which tool was used. So essentially, they didn't say authors cannot use AI. I think they've accepted that AI is going to be used. And so they simply said, look, if you are using AI in your research, please be transparent about how you're using it. Okay? Which I think is common practice in other ways. If you think about when you do quantitative research, you might do a simple t-test. You might use Microsoft Excel to conduct a t-test. You would state that in your research paper. If you were doing a repeated ANOVA analysis using SPSS, you would state, I use SPSS for this. If you were doing a latent growth model with longitudinal data and you used RStudio, you would say, I use RStudio. So I think it's fair of them to say, look, if you're using AI to help yourself with your research, just state how you're using it, please. Now, I myself am a reviewer for 5 academic journals, all Q1 Scopus Index ones. And I remember last year, I was reviewing an article submitted to the British Journal of Educational Technology. And I saw in the article that the author said, I used ChatGPT to create the survey instrument that I used in this study. So, my first response was, oh, you can't do that, right? So I contacted the editor of the journal and said, oh, I've received this article to review, but the author's cheated, he used ChatGPT. And the response was, well, he hasn't cheated. As long as he's been transparent in the usage, that's fine. And they also have a clear position statement where they've said, if you've used AI tools, just be transparent. Put it either in the methods or the acknowledgement section of your paper. Okay. Now, although that's there, they also do have considerations about the extent of the AI usage. So if you submit a paper that says I've used AI to write the entire article for me and design everything, and that would be a different story. But if it's being used as a tool, logically, in the same way we use other tools, then I think that's perfectly fine. And I mean, in my position here, many of my students are actually teachers, vice principals, and principals of schools here in Dubai. So I teach on the master's and the PhD in education. Lots of my role involves teaching teachers how to teach more effectively. And a common scenario that I see are school principals saying, look, Dr. Tendai, I would like to do academic research, but I'm really overwhelmed with the admin duties at my school. And when I'm not with school, I've got to spend some time with my family, right? So for them, often they want to engage in research, but they don't have the time to do it. And so if they can use AI tools to help them to conduct research, why would that be a problem? Why not? And AI can be used at different stages of the research process. So I'm actually going to share a few tools with you today. So normally when we're going to do a research project, we brainstorm some ideas together. Heuristica is a very nice tool for doing that, especially if you're going to be investigating a topic you're not very familiar with. Typeset.io, also known as SciSpace, is an amazing tool for reviewing literature. Often the way we review literature is we'll look on a database, we'll find some articles, read through the abstracts, and then decide if we want to read the paper in more detail. Well, with this tool, you search for your topic and the AI analyzes all the papers for you, and then it creates a table which looks similar to a systematic literature review. So we'll have a column for the abstract, a column for the methodology used, a column for the findings, and so on, and you can add more columns. So you can decide very quickly if you want to read an article in more detail. But then it has a co-pilot. So you can have a dialogue with the AI about the article, which really saves time when it comes to reading academic papers. Cite is another new tool which can be very handy when you're trying to identify your research gap. So one of the main weaknesses, I would say, of ChatGPT is that it hallucinates, right? It creates lots of inaccurate articles and citations and references. It just creates random data. However, Cite, it's, you could say, like ChatGPT, but only looks at academic resources. So whenever it feeds back some information to you, it's based on literature, right? It's based on real publications. Okay. Recently, I was supervising a PhD student, and we were looking at this tool, and based on the topic, we found some of my own papers were cited on there, which was interesting. So Cite is a very up-to-date AI tool, very interesting. When it comes to doing data analysis, Chartpixel is absolutely amazing for quantitative data analysis. I mean, you could spend hours programming in our studio to create a visualization of some sort of chart, some sort of data, and you can submit the same data to Chartpixel, and literally within a few seconds, it produces something which is much more pleasing to the eye. So very interesting tool there. You have Atlas TI. So this is like NVivo for those of you who do qualitative research. It's a way of analyzing interview data. Interestingly, the company NVivo recently bought Atlas. I think they bought it like 2 months ago, just because it was basically doing what NVivo does, but slightly better. So that's an interesting tool to explore in your own time. Jenny.ai is, again, another tool for essay writing that only uses real, genuine academic papers and books as sources. What's interesting about it is it gives you more control than other tools would. So with other tools, you might say, write an essay or a paragraph about a given topic, and it just writes, and you have no control of what it writes, and you wait until it's finished, and then you can review it. With Jenny, you can actually write sentence by sentence, and the AI can read what you've written, and then it could find references that match what you're talking about. You can say to it, give me an opposing argument or opposing perspective, and it could find articles that oppose your view. It's very, very interesting when you take your time to go through this. And then I suppose at the final stage, when it comes to proofreading, there's tools like Trinker. Now, often when you're submitting an article to an academic journal, they'll have a particular referencing style that they use. It may be APA, it may be Chicago, Harvard. What's nice about this tool is you can upload your article and you can say, check for APA referencing style, for example. And it can say to you, oh, the tables that you've created don't match the APA format, or some of your references aren't cited accurately, and so on. Very interesting. Obviously, Microsoft Word has a built-in spell checker and grammar checker. I know many people nowadays are using things like Grammarly, which also has AI built into it now. But I would say Trinker is a lot more advanced and really detailed in how it reviews your work. So my colleague, Professor Chris, and I are basically working on a paper now, which is a competency framework for researchers. So we've seen previously there's AI competency frameworks for teachers being developed, but we said why not develop something for researchers, because it's something that needs to be explored more. So on one hand, we're saying, academics need to have knowledge of the technical side, which tools can be used for which parts of the research process, but then also thinking about methodology, how AI can support and enhance the methodological process. We're also talking about personal development, lifelong learning, and adaptability. So many academics, by default, when they think about AI and see some of the things that are happening, are going to feel, well, what's my purpose? Why am I here then? What's the point of me doing this? There's no need for me anymore. But actually, no. I would say in the same way the calculator is a tool, the same way SPSS is a tool, AI can be used as a tool, but I highly doubt it's going to be replacing any teachers or researchers in the near future. AI tools can be helpful when it comes to collaboration, and that's something many universities are pushing for nowadays, collaboration between departments within the university, but also collaboration with other universities, whether it be in the same country or even international. In terms of society, one of the main challenges we're having is a lack of equity. And actually, we saw this even during the COVID-19 pandemic when it came to online learning. I remember joining an online forum where they're discussing the struggles we're facing with teaching students online. My complaint was that some of the students are watching their iPhone whilst using the laptop. So they have an iPhone and they like watch YouTube or something whilst not really paying attention to the lesson. So I guess in my context, the students are kind of spoiled in that they've got multiple devices. And then there was a professor speaking from Morocco. I forgot the name of the city now, but he was talking about a particular city where actually they didn't have Wi-Fi. So they actually had to teach online via the television. They were broadcasting online lessons through the TV. So that context was very different. So when we look at this AI now, there's going to be more of a divide because most of these AI tools charge money. I mean, 99% of them charge money, and the really good ones are very expensive. So for people who can afford the AI technologies, they could actually probably achieve more than some of the people who can't use the AI technologies for financial reasons and so on. So we need to think about equity when it comes to access to technology and AI. And then the final thing we're discussing is obviously the ethics of all of this. So the final thing I'd like to say before we run out of time is science fiction to some extent is now science reality. For those of you who grew up in the 80s like myself, you may remember TV shows like Knight Rider, which was a self-driving car. And now we have self-driving automated cars. You may remember TV shows like Star Trek, where they had the flip phone. Right? They had the flip phone device where they call each other. We used to think, oh, that's so cool. Imagine you can call someone who's in a different city or a different country. And now we all have flip phones and beyond that even with the phones we're using nowadays. If you remember Terminator, I think it was, they had Skynet. Nowadays we have Google, right? We have the internet and Google tracking everything we're doing. You have a discussion with friends about a topic, and then you go home and you receive advertisements related to the topic you were discussing. I remember last year reading a report about a lady who found out she was pregnant based on the advertisements she was getting from Google. Right? So yeah, so I mean, lots of the science fiction we used to see in the 80s, it's all now reality, and AI is here, and it's continuously learning and growing and developing. And so we're living in this, what we call post-sci-fi era, something that my colleague and I are saying. Obviously, you've probably heard of the post-pandemic era and the post-AI era. We're saying, well, this is post-sci-fi now, essentially. So that's the era we're living in. We have to sort of embrace it to an extent. We can't have our head in the sands, and we have to move on from 1995. We're going to 2025 next year. All of this technology is here. People are using it. We need to be aware of that, but we also need to ensure there's policies and systems in place to ensure academic integrity as much as possible. So that's all I wanted to say for today. So thank you for your time, and I'll leave the floor open for any questions. Oh, there's a chat here. Sorry, I've just realized there's a chat. Um, hello. Oh, people from all over the world here. Oh, amazing. Okay, thank you. So I've only just recognized that there's a chat box here. Sorry. Oh, Canva. Okay, interesting. Oh, the presentation. Right. Thank you very much for the nice comments, everybody. Oh, I'm very humbled by these nice words. I will ask the organizers if they can share our slides with attendees so that you can have access to the presentation. Especially, there are probably some apps there that you might want to follow up with in your own time as well. So I'll definitely speak to the organizers about sharing those slides. Thank you. Oh, examples of when student used AI wrong. Oh, okay. Oh, so there's an interesting question here about times when students have used AI in an unethical way. Yes, well, we're dealing with that all the time here at my institution. Um, as I said, we're teaching postgraduate and masters and PhD students. Many of them have full-time jobs as teachers in schools. Many of them have families, and so the way I would have studied back when I did my master's and my PhD, where I had all day in the library to spend reading, they don't have that same time on their hands, right? So, I mean, some of us were fortunate to be able to study in a context where we didn't have to work alongside our studies. But nowadays, many students are called non-traditional. Many students now have dependents, they have responsibilities, and so they don't have the freedom of time. So if there's a deadline coming up and they know that they can use the AI to help produce something very quickly, many of them are doing that. And we can see the difference between students who are using AI as a tool and students who are just using it for the sake of submitting any essay, because the way that the AI produces its output, it's very obvious to see it's generated by a computer, and often it produces bullet points rather than paragraphs and so much. So yeah, it's quite clear for experienced teachers to see where the AI has been used heavily. And so we're just trying to show students how to use it in a, let's say, ethical way, and as a tool to support and enhance their learning more than just to submit any essay to get some sort of mark. Okay, so with the tools that I shared today, the one that I personally use is SciSpace. So that's the one for literature review. The other tools I don't use just because, I mean, I used to teach English for a long time, so I'm quite comfortable with my writing style, so I like to write myself. In terms of when it comes to data analysis, I'm quite good at stats, so I like to analyze the data myself. But when it comes to literature reviews, when it comes to reading, there's always so much to read, right? There's books, there's articles, there's new articles all the time. And so SciSpace for me is really handy just to very quickly identify what's being done. So if I want to identify a research gap when I'm looking to a topic, let's say I'm looking at special needs students in Sharjah and the challenges they're facing in schools. So I can type that into SciSpace and it will show me all of the publications related to special needs in the UAE context. And then I can see, okay, what methodologies were they using? What were their sample size looking like? What results did they get? And then I can very quickly identify gaps. Often in the education field, we're doing qualitative research. So I can see, there's no quantitative papers, or there's only 2 mixed methods papers. So I can say, okay, I'm going to come from a quantitative perspective. So I would say personally, I use SciSpace quite a lot. The other tools, not so much, but I know I've seen colleagues and students use some of the other tools. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, well, I think I've probably just gone over the time now, so I'll wrap things up there. But and there's comments as well from the organizers that yes, I need to wrap things up. So yeah, so thank you very much for your time, everyone, today. I suppose I'll leave my email address in the chat in case anybody would like to reach out to me. I'd be happy to have further discussions and answer any more questions that there may be. And I'll definitely speak to the organizers about sharing the slides with you. Please enjoy the rest of the conference, and hopefully I might see some of you in your sessions as well. Thank you very much.